18. Moonface Gets Into a Fix. The children went over to the hens that Joe had seen. They were lovely ones, but a very peculiar color, for their wings were pale green and the rest of their feathers were buttercup yellow. They had funny high voices and were very friendly indeed, for they came to press themselves round the children's legs like cats. "Do you suppose Mother would like hens this color?" said Joe doubtfully. "I don't see why not," said Bessie. "I think they're pretty. The thing is, do they lay good eggs?" One of the hens at once laid an egg. It was large and quite an ordinary color. Bessie was pleased. "There you are," she said. "If they lay eggs as big as this one, Mother will be very pleased. How many hens are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I wonder how we could take them all." "Oh, they'll follow you," said Silky, "just like my clock follows me. Tell them you want them, and they'll come." "We want you to come with us, hen," said Joe at once, and the 7 green-winged hens came over to him and lined up in a row to follow the children. It was really very funny. "Well, that's our hens found," said Bessie. "Now for the goats and the spades." They wandered along, looking at everything, and it didn't matter what anyone wanted. They were sure to find it sooner or later. There were boats and all kinds of dogs, shopping baskets, rings, toys, work baskets, and even such small things as symbols. "It's the strangest land I ever saw," said Joe. "We look pretty strange, too," said Fanny, giggling, as she walked round and round and saw the 7 hens and the big clock padding along behind them. "Oh, look, there's the dearest, prettiest white goat I ever saw. Do let's take her." Sure enough, not far off was a lovely white nanny goat, with soft brown eyes and pricky ears. She looked quite ordinary, except for 2 blue spots by her tail. "Little white goat, please come with us," said Fanny, and the goat trotted up at once. It took its place behind the hens, but it didn't seem to like the clock, which bumped into it every now and then, just to tease it. "Don't do that, clock," said Silky. "Ding dong," said the clock in a quiet, cheeky voice, and it trod on one of the hen's feet. "Squawk," said the hen. "I hope your clock won't be a nuisance," said Bessie. "It's not behaving like a grandmother, is it? It's a bit of a tease, I think." "Now for the garden spade," said Joe, as he suddenly saw a fine, strong spade hanging up in a fence with some other garden tools. "What about this one, girls? This one looks strong enough for Father, doesn't it?" He took it down and dug in the ground with it. It was a splendid spade. Joe put it over his shoulder, and the 4 of them grinned joyfully at each other. "We've got everything we want," said Joe. "Come on, we'll go back to old Moonface, and then we'll take some cakes for tea." So, followed by the 7 hens, the white goat, and the clock, and the 4 of them made their way back to where they had left Moonface. But he wasn't sitting where they had left him. He was pulling at a lovely rug, which was hanging from a tree. It was perfectly round with a hole in the middle. "Hello, hello," yelled Moonface as he saw them. "Look what I've got, just what I've always wanted for round my tree room. A round rug with a hole in the middle where the slippery slip begins. Fine! But Moonface, you said you'd watch to see that the land of Take What You Want kept by the faraway tree, all right, didn't you?" said Silky anxiously. "Where is the hole that leads down to the tree?" "Oh, it's somewhere over there," said Moonface, draping the rug over him and staggering off. "Come on, we're sure to find it." But they didn't. It had gone. For the land of Take What You Want had moved away from the faraway tree, and was now goodness knows where. "Moonface, it's too bad of you," said Joe anxiously. "You did promise." Moonface looked worried and pale. He hunted about for the hole, but there was no hole to be seen. He began to shake with fright. "I've got you all in a terrible fix," he said in a trembling voice. "Here we are stuck in a land where there's everything we want, and the only thing we want is to get away." Everyone looked upset. This was too bad. "I feel cross with you, Moonface," said Joe in a stern voice. "You said you'd keep guard, and you didn't. I don't think you're much of a friend." "I am ashamed of you too, Moonface," said Silky, who had tears in her eyes. Bessie and Fanny said nothing. They felt angry with Moonface, but they felt sorry for him too, because he was so upset. "We'll find someone to help us," said Moonface gloomily, and they all set off, followed by their hens, their goat, and the clock, which kept striking 4 o'clock. Nobody knew why. But now they found a very curious thing. There didn't seem to be anyone at all in the land of Take What You Want. All the gnomes, the pixies, and the elves had gone. "They must have known the land was going to move off," said Moonface with a groan. "And they slipped down the ladder in time. Oh, why did I leave it?" They wandered all over the land, which was not really very large, but was more crowded with things and animals than anywhere they'd ever seen. "I can't think what to do," said Silky. "It's true that there's everything we want, but we shan't starve, but it's not the sort of place we want to live in forever." They walked here and there, and then suddenly they came to something they hadn't noticed before. It was a large and shining airplane. "Ooh," said Joe, his eyes gleaming. "Look at that! How I wish I could fly an airplane. Can you fly one, Moonface?" Moonface shook his head. Silky shook hers too. "Then that's no good," said Joe with a sigh. "I thought perhaps we might fly away from this land in the airplane." He climbed into the airplane and had a good look. There were 5 handles there. One had a label that said up. Another label said down. A third said straight on, and the fourth said to the right and to the left. Joe stared at the handles in excitement. "I believe I could fly this airplane," he said. "I do believe I could. It looks quite easy." "No, Joe, don't," said Bessie in alarm, but Joe had pressed the handle labeled up, and before anyone could say another word, the shining airplane had risen upwards with Joe, leaving the others staring open-mouthed on the ground. "Now Joe's gone," said Fanny, and burst into tears. The airplane rose up and up. It circled round when Joe pressed the handle labeled to the right. It flew straight on when he pressed the third handle, and it flew down when he pressed the down handle. It was as easy as that. Joe flew neatly down to the ground and landed not far away from the others. They rushed to him, shouting and laughing. Joe, did you really fly it yourself?" "Well, you saw me," said Joe, beaming at everyone and feeling most tremendously grand. "It's quite easy. Get in, everyone, and we'll fly off. Maybe we'll come to somewhere that Moonface knows if we fly long enough." They all got in. Bessie packed the 7 squawking hens in the back and sat the white goat on her knee, and the spade went on the floor. The clock made a nuisance of itself because it wouldn't stay where it was put, but kept climbing over everybody's feet to look out of the window. Silky began to wish she hadn't brought it. "Ready?" said Joe, pressing the handle marked up, and up they went. What a lovely feeling it was. They really couldn't help feeling excited. Silky's clock got terribly excited, too. It struck 29 without stopping, and everybody got tired of it. "I shan't wind you up tonight if you don't keep quiet," said Silky suddenly, and that finished the clock. It lay down in a corner and didn't say another ding or dong. "Where are we off to, I wonder?" said Bessie, but nobody knew. Chapter 20. Off to Dame Slap's school. Joe flew the airplane very well indeed. As soon as he was high enough, he pressed the straight-on handle, and the shining airplane flew forward. The children leaned over the side to see what they were flying over. They had soon passed the land of Take What You Want, and came to a strange, desolate country, where there were no trees nor grass, and not a house was to be seen. "This is the country of loneliness," said Moonface, peering over. "Don't land there, Joe. Fly on." Joe flew on. Once he came to an enormous hill, he had to press the handle marked up, or the airplane would have flown straight into it. It was really quite fun. Joe had no idea that it was so easy to fly. The little white goat on Bessie's knee was as good as gold. It licked Bessie's cheek every now and then, just as if it were a dog. The hens were good and quiet, and they lay perfectly still. The airplane flew over the land of great towers and castles. "Giant land," said Silky, looking under the enormous buildings. "I hope we don't land here." "Rather not," said Joe, and he pressed the straight-on handle still further, so that the airplane flew forward like a bird, faster and faster. The children's hair streamed backwards, and as far as Silky's mop of golden hair, it looked like a buttercup off to Dame Slap's school, blown in the wind. It looked like a buttercup blown in the wind. Over the land of Lollipop they went, and over the country of Flop, and then the airplane began to make a funny noise. "Hello," said Joe. "What's wrong?" "I believe the airplane's tired," said Moonface. "It sounds out of breath." "Don't be silly, Moonface," said Joe. "Airplanes don't get out of breath." "This kind does," said Moonface. "Can't you hear it panting?" Certainly seemed as if the airplane was panting. It went. "Had we better go down and give it a rest?" said Joe. "Yes," said Moonface, peering over the side. "It seems safe. I don't know what land this is, but it looks quite ordinary. There's a big green house down there with an enormous garden. Perhaps you could land on the long, smooth lawn, Joe. We shouldn't get bumped then." "Right," said Joe, and pressed the handle marked down. And down they went, gliding smoothly. Bump! They reached the grass and ran along on the airplane's big wheels. It stopped, and everyone got out, glad to stretch their legs. 10 minutes rest, and the airplane will be ready to go off again," said Moonface, patting it. It was still panting. "I wonder where we are," said Silky, looking round. Moonface gazed at the big green house in the distance, and then he frowned. "Oh, my," he groaned. "I know whose house that is. It's a school, and it belongs to old Dame Slap. All the pixies and fairies are sent here to learn. Let's hope Dame Slap doesn't catch sight of us." Everyone looked around nervously, and suddenly, down a path came a tall old woman with large spectacles on her long nose and a big white bonnet on her hair. Moonface ran to the airplane. "Quick," he said, "it's Dame Slap." But the old lady was up to them before they could escape. "Ah," she said, "so here's another lot of new students. Come this way, please." "No, thank you," said Joe. "We landed here to give our airplane a rest. We are on our way home." "Oh, no, no, no," she said to Joe. "Come with me, all of you." There didn't seem to be anything else to do. Joe, Bessie, Fanny, Moonface, Silky, the white goat, and all 7 hens followed Dame Slap, looking very miserable. The clock wouldn't walk, so Silky had to carry it. It was upset, so upset it didn't even tick. Everyone felt hungry. Joe pulled Dame Slap's sleeve timidly. "Could we please have something to eat?" he asked. "Tea will be ready in a few minutes." Heads up, everyone. Don't stoop, little girl." The little girl was poor Fanny, who had got poked between her shoulders to make her stand up straight. Really, Dame Slap was not at all a very nice person. It was very bad luck to have landed in her garden. But everybody cheered up a little bit at the thought of tea. They were taken into a large hall full of pixies and other fairy folk. They were all sitting down in rows at wooden tables, but they stood up when Dame Slap came into the room. "Sit over there," said Dame Slap, pointing to an empty table. The children, Moonface, Silky, the goat, and the hens all took their places. The clock was stood at the end and looked very sulky. The children looked down the tables. "Oh, what lovely buns, what gorgeous biscuits, what jugs of lemonade." Dame Slap ran her eyes over the little folks standing at the tables, and she frowned. "Twinkle, come here," she said, and a small pixie walked up to her. "Haven't I told you to brush your hair properly for meal times?" said Dame Slap. "I'm sorry," said Twinkle, and she burst into tears. "And there's Doodle over there with a torn tunic," said Dame Slap. "Come here, Doodle." Dame Doodle came and was so sad that Bessie and Fanny felt nervous and hoped that their hair and hands and dresses were clean and tidy. "Sit," said Dame Slap, and everyone sat. "Have a bun," said Joe, and passed Bessie and Fanny a plate of delicious-looking buns with jam in the middle. But what a shock for them. As soon as the bun touched their place, they turned into hard, round, stale pieces of bread. The children didn't dare say a word. They saw the same thing happen to everyone in the room except for Dame Slap, who had a marvelous tea, buns, and biscuits, and pieces of plum cake. The lemonade turned into water as soon as it was poured into glasses. It was dreadfully disappointing. In the middle of the meal, a gnome came in to say that someone wanted to speak to Dame Slap, and she went out of the room. And then, dear me, the children found that the little folk in the room were very bad indeed. They crowded round them and poked them and pinched them and made such rude remarks that Fanny began to cry. They made so much noise that nobody heard Dame Slap coming back in again. My goodness, wasn't she angry? She clapped her hands together and made everyone jump nearly out of their skin. "What is all this?" she shouted in a very fierce voice. "Form in a line. March past me at once." To the children's dismay, everyone got a good hard bop as they passed the cross old lady. But when they passed her, she did not bop them, for she knew that they had been teased by the others. So they were very glad indeed and felt a little more cheerful. "Go to school," said Dame Slap when the last of the line had gone by. To the schoolroom they all went and took their places, even the little green-winged hen. "Now please answer the question written on the blackboard. You have each got a paper and a pencil. Anyone putting down the wrong answers will be very sorry indeed." Joe looked at the questions on the board. He read them out to the others in great astonishment. "If you take away 3 caterpillars from one bush, how many gooseberries will be left? Add a pint of milk to a peck of peas and say what will be left over. If a train runs 6 miles an hour and has to pass under 4 tunnels, put down what the guard's mother is likely to have for dinner on Sundays." Everybody gazed at the board in despair. Whatever did those questions mean? They seemed to be nonsense. "I can't do any of this," said Moonface in a loud voice, and he threw down his pencil. "It's silly nonsense," said Joe, and he threw down his pencils too. The girls did the same, and Silky tore her paper in half. All the pixies and fairy folk stared at them in great astonishment and horror. "Indeed," said Dame Slap, suddenly looking twice as big as usual. "If that's how you feel, come with me." Nobody wanted to go with her, but they found that they had to, for their legs walked them after Dame Slap without being made to. It was most extraordinary. Dame Slap led them to a small room and pushed them all in. Then she shut the door with a slam and turned the key. "You will stay here, and I will come and see if you are sorry," she said. "This is awful," said Joe gloomily. She has no right to keep us here. We don't belong to her silly school. We haven't even, we didn't even want to be here. It was just an accident that we came here." "Well, what are we to do now?" said Silky, pushing back her golden hair. "It seems as if we'll have to stay for 3 hours and then say we're sorry." "I don't like it at all." Nobody liked it. They all sat on the floor and looked angry and miserable. If only they could escape from Dame Slep's silly old school. Tomorrow we will read chapter 21. Silky's clock is very clever.